This is a story of an American dream. In 1914, my great-great-great-grandfather, Dr. George Avery Bunting, developed Noxzema.
And he started selling it as Bunting's skin remedy. And what was different about it was most creams at that time you put on your skin were greasy. His product didn't have any grease in it. So it was a general purpose remedy product in the home. Somebody along the way said, how can we sell more? Let's sell it as a soap. Wash your face every day with it. Use a lot more that way than using it seasonally for sunburn or for when you have an itch. So we started advertising it. Use this instead of soap. It's less drying and better for your skin.
Starting from just one product, the Noxell Corporation eventually became a multi-million-dollar company. However, it all started for my grandfather, George Bunting, in 1966 when he first started working for the Noxell Corporation. He began as a project manager and worked his way up to becoming president of the company in 1973. In 1989, he, along with the board of directors and shareholders, played a vital role in selling the company to Procter & Gamble. Looking back almost 30 years later, he did not regret his decision to sell the family business. In the early 1900s, Dr. Bunting's sunburn remedy was most commonly used to soothe and heal sunburns. However, a new name was created as some customers bragged to Dr. Bunting, "You knocked my eczema." That inspired the company to change their name to Noxzema. The product then gained the slogan, "The Miracle Cream of Baltimore."
Ooh, bad, bad sun. Graceless medicated Noxzema skin cream is cool comfort. Moisturizes sun-dried skin. Good Noxzema. Spray or cream.
After continuing to grow, in 1920, the Noxzema Corporation finally opened up their own factory in a brick row house on Lafayette Avenue. Noxell stayed there for 6 years, mixing and pouring the cream by hand with still very few employees.
My father realized in the 50s it was a one-product company and we needed more than that. Everybody was sort of from Baltimore and Hamden. So he broke the mold, went to New York, got somebody for advertising, new product development, and sales. Working with their advertising agency brought CoverGirl onto the picture.
With the new factory and employees, sales increased to over $100,000. 10 years after that, Noxzema expanded nationally with the help of extensive radio and print advertising. New products were being released within Noxzema. In 1961, CoverGirl medicated makeup was launched nationally and profits increased by 160%.
With CoverGirl Clean Makeup, you know you look your best. It's Noxzema Pure, so you're sure of fresh, natural color and clean coverage that lasts.
That face, that CoverGirl face.
CoverGirl Clean Makeup by Noxzema, the makeup for that face.
Sales of the company reached over $22 million. Since the increase in demand from CoverGirl and new products, the company relocated to a Cockeysville location a few years later. Because Noxzema was selling more than one product, it was only fitting that the name had to change. It was changed to Noxell Corporation. Despite inflation in the coming years, Noxzema, CoverGirl, and Luster Oil continue to flourish. Noxzema lasted a successful 75 years of Bunting leadership until September 1989. In 1989, Noxell Corporation was sold to Procter & Gamble for $1.4 billion.
My grandfather invented Noxzema as a druggist in his pharmacy. It became important enough that he could give up the pharmacy in his early 50s, so he got to be, quote, an entrepreneur later in life. And that was pretty much all-consuming to him. So I had that growing up. My father succeeded my grandfather in 1949 and became the president. His, being the second generation, was not anywhere near as engaged in the same sense that my grandfather was, because he had to live up to his father's expectations, and I think that was difficult for him. So when we sold to Procter & Gamble, CoverGirl was 75% of our business, and Noxzema was 25%, so it transformed the company in a major way. And so my father ran it from 49 to the 60s. So when I came into the business in 1966, later in my development, I worked with Lord Witt, not with my father per se. And I took over from him in 1973. The company was $100 million in sales. When we sold to Procter in 89, we were like $550 million. So we had a good run. I had no preordained idea I wanted to be president or should be president. My father had been president. When he didn't want to do it anymore, there wasn't anybody in the family in the business. I did succeed my father. I did have the proper educational background with the MBA. I'd had the experience at the advertising agency. I, quote, had the credentials. It didn't mean I could do the job. There was one individual in the company who been asked to be president, and I thought he had leadership issues. I didn't like the way he treated people, and I thought it would be bad for the company and bad for the morale. So that's when I asked to assume more responsibility. And I don't think anybody else in the company could have pulled that off. So I could because of my relationship with the family and the business. I learned on the job. You don't go to school to be a president. It's basically, yes, you have to understand the business. You have to be able to. Everybody has a different leadership style, but I think it's important to be transparent and open, non-judgmental. And that, I mean, don't pretend to have all the answers. Realize you can make mistakes and admit it and move on. The idea of CoverGirl originally was going to be called Cover Treat. It was going to be 3 shades of tinted material to put on acne. Let's change the name, make it CoverGirl. Then we can use the covers of magazines and feature the model that was on the magazine as part of our ad. So we went from 6 products in 65. In 1889, we had 350. We were trying to get it into what I call mass merchandise situations, and to get it behind the cosmetic counter in the drugstore and out where people could make their own self-selection. We did not hire an investment banker to sell the company. It was not, quote, for sale, but Procter & Gamble knocked on the door. They had great brands, great integrity, and were good people, so the conversation took place. They eventually put an offer on the table, and I took it to our board of directors. They reviewed it and approved it to bring to the shareholders, who voted in favor of the sale. Many years later, I meet people who are still working there, who retired after I did, and they always said it was never the same. It wasn't a family anymore. But that's a regret, because people obviously weren't, quote, as happy. I think professionally, some grew there, and I basically felt good about it and still do. There were 3 concerns on my part. Globalization and being able to compete internationally. In order to do that, we'd have to make acquisitions of other companies in other countries, and that was a high risk to our shareholders. Number 2, I felt that research and development would be more critical in the future. There might be more quasi-drug/cosmetic products. And 3 was the concentration of trade, the Walmarts of the world, who then could dictate pricing terms. And I can remember when Sears Roebuck was a giant, they would dictate to their suppliers what they'd sell them and at what price they would sell them. I didn't ever want to be in that situation. You become successful and well known for 2 reasons. One, you got to have good products, that you have repeat customers, and we always had good products. If ours was $3, our products are just as good as one that sold for $15. As our head of R&D said, we're all chefs, we just mix the ingredients differently. Not only do we have good products, we had good advertising, and advertising is what drove the business.
For a beautiful body, just pump, pump. For beautiful skin, you just pump, pump.
Introducing medicated Noxzema skin cream with a pump. It's where beautiful skin begins every day, because nothing cleans like Noxzema. It digs out dirt and oil but won't dry like soap. Noxzema, now with a pump.
For beautiful skin, you just pump, pump. Beautiful skin begins with Noxzema.
Now with a pump.
Procter & Gamble sold CoverGirl to Coty, which is a cosmetic company, I think, fragrance company, who probably understand the business better than they do. I certainly wouldn't want to step back and try to run a business today. It's changed dramatically. When we reach consumers, we use television. We had 3 networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC. So you would pick out what shows you wanted to advertise on to reach your target market. And then we did some print advertising in women's magazines like Vogue and 17. And that was it. But nowadays, with social media, it's much more. It's a whole different world out there.
In doing my family history project on the Noxell Corporation, it was exciting to finally learn more about my family's company and about my grandfather. I'm sure that over the years I could have asked my grandfather questions about our family business, but I never felt comfortable doing that. Having to interview him for this project was a great excuse which gave me an opportunity to spend quality time with him. I find it interesting and in fact mind-blowing that this great successful company was run for 75 years under Bunting leadership. Growing up, I kind of knew about the history of Noxzema and CoverGirl, but never really understood the extent that my family played a role in. One time, I remember telling one of my friends about our family business, but as no one ever knew what Noxell nor Noxzema was, it didn't seem like a big deal. I am really appreciative that I was able to make this video. Aside from learning about my family business, I also learned a lot about the advertising industry over the period of 75 years. It was also fascinating learning about how Noxzema was actually made and developed. I think it is an amazing story of my family business, and it's truly an example of an American dream. I am so proud of what my family has accomplished, and I am inspired of my grandfather's modesty.
Get a kick out of clean, get a kick out of clean with Noxzema.
Beautiful skin begins with clean.
I believe beautiful skin begins with clean skin.